just wanted to encourage everybody, if you want something to eat, please grab something to eat, get something to drink. We'll start in just a little while, but I just wanted to just let you know food's there for you to eat. Please do. We will also be videoing this tonight for if there are people that can't be here. Thank you.
Before we start, if anybody wants any more water, any sandwiches or snacks, please feel free to go ahead. We might start early since it looks like we have a crowd here, but feel free to get a little snack there real quick. Real quick. Oh, okay. Let's begin in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this gathering of your people. Thank you for the gift of Catholic education. And we acknowledge all the sacrifice of our parents and those who teach in our schools on behalf of the apostolate of Catholic education. Continue to bless our efforts, especially as we anticipate the opening of another school year. Bless our students and their parents, our teachers, our faculties. We ask the intercession of Our Lady as we pray. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. Our Lady, Queen of Peace, pray for us. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. First off, I want to thank all of you for coming to this meeting. This is going to be the first of a series of meetings that we really need to have if we're going to get the word out about what this Missouri Scholars Program is all about. Okay? So I had my first meetings over at campus at Springfield Catholic, and Deacon Rob Huff, our superintendent, who's here tonight, he was there at that meeting as well. And then next week we'll be going over to Joplin to all the high schools. So we have three Catholic high schools. And I've sort of asked the three high schools to kind of take the lead on this, especially the development office, development directors, to kind of take these to the next level. So it's good that we're at the three different high schools. And just to explain, first off, before they explain what Missouri Scholars is all about, and Tim will do that, just to explain how we got involved. This is a little brochure here. You might have seen it. It might be at your table. I don't know. But you'll notice that there's a letter from Bishop Johnston. Bishop Johnston had been the bishop down here, as you recall, and then he was transferred up to Kansas City, St. Joe, and that's when I was sent from St. Louis down to here. Why are we promoting something that Bishop Johnston is doing? That's a good question. The question is because it's been over 6 months ago, could be even longer, say, that Bishop Johnston reached out to me and he asked me, are you familiar with this Missouri Scholars Program? And I said, no, I was not. And he explained it to me over the phone. And he said, I think it would be worthwhile for us to have a conversation on how we can get this program down in southern Missouri. What was his motivation? He told me, he said to me, Ed, because that's my first name, that's what a bishop calls another guy. He says, Ed, I love southern Missouri. I love the Diocese of Springfield, Cape Girardeau, and I think this can make a big difference for your diocese. And I said, well, I'm just so touched that you would be so concerned and would really reach out like that. But then I hung up and I didn't do anything. And then it was a couple months later, he reached out again. I need to act on this. And because of him reaching out to me a second time, Deacon Rob and myself and Doug Kissinger, who is our new CFO, the three of us drove up to Kansas City to meet with their school office staff, and they explained the ins and outs of this Missouri scholarship program with the tax credits. And it's a program that has been voted in by the state legislature, and it's administered through them, but you have to have a 401c in order to get into the program. Okay, so the government administers it, but then you have to have a 401c to participate in this. And for the Diocese of Kansas City, St. Joe, it's called Bright Futures Fund. Okay? And then that's what Bishop Johnson offered to our diocese, is that we could be under their umbrella. And maybe for the first couple of years to get this started down in our diocese and really make a difference. And then we could get our own office to administer it down here. So it's a very generous offer, very kind and considerate for Bishop Johnston to try to get us involved in this down in southern Missouri. So that's sort of the genesis of how this started. I had heard bits and pieces about this Missouri Scholars. I really wasn't quite sure what it is, and in all honesty, you know, that's not my bailiwick. I'm a religious guy. I say Mass, I hear confessions, I try to inspire the people of God in the ways of faith, So when you start talking tax credits, I get this kind of a foggy look on, I don't know what you're talking about, okay? But I do know that in his diocese, since he has started this, he's been able to not just increase enrollment in the Catholic schools, but he's actually opened 2 new schools because of this program. And when he told me that, that's when really my ears perked up. So I think that's part of the interest that I have. And so when I met when I was at Springfield Catholic 2 or 3 days ago, and here, and I'm going to say the same thing in Joplin. If there's any principals out there or any teachers out there, we need to be very upfront and honest about what we can do. What I mean by that is, certainly we want to increase the enrollment. We looked at all the statistics. Deacon Rob got all the statistics for our schools. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Deacon, that every one of our schools has empty seats that we could fill if we get the funding through this tax program, this tuition program here. If we can get the funding for that, we can fill in the classrooms, okay? But that's not our main interest, and I need to say this loud and clear, because we also need to know what our limitations are. We may not be able to take every student, and our teachers and our principals need to hear that, because some of our students have special needs that maybe we cannot respond to. That's not saying that we're not good. It's just saying that we have limits, and we need to know our limits. If a young person has an IEP, an individual education plan, maybe we can't administer that, okay? Maybe we don't have the resources. So our goal is not really to fill every seat in our classrooms. Our goal is, and that's why we need to have a meeting with our pastors as well, is to say, who are the people that you're seeing Sunday after Sunday at church, and they have kids, but they're not in our schools? Then to ask the question, why are they not in our schools? And it might be a legitimate reason. Well, my kid has special educational needs, and they have a great program in our public school district. Great. No harm, no foul. Okay? But if there is an issue of finance, and say, well, I've got 4 kids. I'd love to have them in our Catholic school, but we can't afford it. That's the type of person that we're kind of giving them a lifeline. And to say, okay, you could benefit from this Missouri Scholars Program. That's exactly the person. So I think between the principals who might know people in their parish, the pastors that should know the people in their parish, that maybe have children, they're not sending them to our Catholic schools because they feel like they can't afford it. It's too much of a burden. This removes the financial burden, okay? And that's why I think it's going to be a game changer if this really takes off like it did up in Kansas City, St. Joe Diocese, to fill in seats, and they opened new schools. So when I said that, there was a public school teacher at Springfield Catholic, and they don't have a Catholic school in her area. She's sort of from the middle of the diocese. And she said, well, would you ever consider reopening a Catholic school? And I said, absolutely. Off the top of my head, the last school that we closed was in, I think, West Plains. And I go to West Plains, and I see these kids at Mass. And that's my hope, that maybe within the next couple of years, we would be able to reopen maybe a school that we had closed. Because especially in that central part of our diocese, once you get past Poplar Bluff, there's no Catholic school until you get to Springfield. It's like an educational desert for Catholicism. Now, we have PSR programs, and that's all great, but wouldn't it be great if we could offer Catholic education in that middle part of the diocese once again? So that's my hope. So if this is all at the behest of Bishop Johnston, who has been so kind because he loves his former diocese. What's not to love? And so he loves his former diocese, and he thinks that this can make a difference in our diocese the way it has up in Kansas City. So that's sort of the genesis of this whole process and how it got down here. And then I contacted, who did I contact? I contacted you and Dennis Vallink, that's right. And I asked them if they could maybe try to get some people that would come and to be able to maybe listen to the program. So I'm grateful to Bob for your efforts in trying to get people here. And Dennis could not be here tonight, but I think he said he was going to try to watch it on the live stream. And so what we did was we contacted business people in each of the 3 cities, Cape, Springfield, and over in Joplin, working with the high school development directors, funneling the program through there. And so I think this can be a real game changer for all of us here in the diocese regarding Catholic education. So to that end now, I want to turn it over to Tim to have Tim give us some explanations of the tax credit program. Tim?
All right, thank you, Bishop Rice. Appreciate your efforts in coordinating with Bishop Johnston to bring the Bright Futures Fund, that EAO, to our diocese. And to kind of round out kind of what the program is with a little more detail. This program actually was passed in 2021. And so when we were hearing about this in 2021, here at the high school, we got really excited that okay, here's this program. There wasn't a lot of guidance for how it was going to work. Actually, they released everything in July for the school year starting in August, and that was the tax credits and the scholarships and everything else, and we were looking for guidance the entire time, trying to figure out how is this program going to work. And so everybody kind of fumbled through it. The program in its genesis was limited to municipalities of 30,000 or more, okay? So no one else was eligible. You had to live within the city limits of those municipalities in order to qualify for the program. Notre Dame High School has a lot of students that live within Cape Girardeau, but we also have some that live outside of city limits that couldn't take advantage of it. We're a regional high school. We have people from all over that couldn't take advantage of it. So we thought it could benefit us. And at the time, our diocese was not partnered with the Diocese of Kansas City, St. Joe. We didn't have an EAO, so we got lumped in with the generic EAO. We got lumped in with the Herzog Foundation, which was the catch-all for anybody that didn't have their own. We were fortunate to have somebody that could coordinate that. But we quickly learned that it had extreme limitations. That first year that MOScholars opened, we had 6 students. No, we had 5 students that qualified that were attending our high school. I'm not sure how many St. Mary's or St. Vincent's had at the time, but we had 5. And that was great. These were kids and families that they were coming from public school to private school, or they had an IEP, and they were already in our building. So that's the benefit. If you already have these students that have IEPs in your building, they automatically qualify. They're in. There's not a financial component to it. So we had 5 students that were able to take advantage of it, and their families were very grateful. And school was very grateful because these were families that the school was going to be providing financial aid to regardless. So if MOScholars is able to provide that financial aid for these families that already wanted to attend our schools, that's a bonus. That's financial aid that could go elsewhere. But we quickly learned after that year 1, everybody, if you still qualify, you get renewed. So for year 2, when they opened the window for the MOScholars with the Herzog Foundation, and I think it was in less than 2 weeks, they had 650 families statewide that applied. They were only going to give 120 new scholarships. So they were already maxed out. We haven't had a new kid since with the Herzog Foundation. So this is a lifeline. This Bright Futures Fund is a lifeline for Catholic schools. So this gives a little bit of information about what Bishop Rice has already talked about, and it's the ability to allow a family to choose private education if they qualify. Okay. So what has changed is what Bishop Johnston talked about a little bit. The Diocese of Springfield Cape Girardeau, we partnered with Kansas City St. Joe for our EAO. So now we have a dedicated EAO. So tax credits from our diocese to fund scholarships specifically for schools in our diocese, not statewide, not other denominations, not just private schools, Catholic schools in our diocese, which is a great thing. That means, you know, is it specific that I can give tax credits specifically for St. Mary's grade school? No, but it's staying in our diocese. So that's the kind of the crux of all what we're talking about, and that's the important part of why we want to have these meetings. So for this upcoming school year, they just passed Senate Bill 727, I think is the Senate bill that just passed, that greatly expands this MOScholars tax credit program. Okay, greatly expands in that it is, for the 25-26 school year, will be open to the entire state, which Bishop Rice was alluding to. So schools in all of our communities within our diocese can take advantage of this. Families within all of our diocese parishes can take advantage of this, which is a great change. Because, like he said, there's a lot of our schools that are way below capacity. And if this is an opportunity to allow for families to send their kids to Catholic schools, that's a win. So just to give you an example of how that eligibility works, okay? If you have an IEP, I already mentioned that, you automatically qualify. Now, what Bishop Rice was talking about, and how we use this at the school, we have kids that have IEPs in our building. We have kids coming from grade schools that have IEPs, but we don't have kids that have severe disabilities, and that's the difference. There's a lot of IEPs that our schools are already working with, and that's I want to commend a lot of our area Catholic schools for taking a positive step in that direction, because where we were a decade ago compared to where we are with allowing students to get an education in our building that otherwise wouldn't have in the past, we've done a lot. We can't do it all, and I think that's what Bishop Rice is alluding to. But we have, and so there are a lot of kids that can take advantage of this. There are kids that have IEPs that will come into our school. We have teachers already, and our teachers are excellent, but we have specialized teachers in our building that can help our students and help the rest of the teachers allow these kids to get a good education. So IEPs qualify automatically. But then what also changes is the current form, 200% above free and reduced, it qualifies. That's, you know, there's a tiered system and who gets first dibs. But the new legislation, that goes up to 300%, which is huge. Family of four, $166,500, you qualify if you're there or below. That's a lot of families in our diocese. Okay, that's a whole lot of families in our diocese. So a lot more kids are going to be eligible. We expand the region. Everybody in the state is eligible in terms of geographically, and then we also expand who can qualify. Okay, so two positives there with this bill that's going into effect. So a couple other things with that. Let me just expand on that a little bit more. What Bishop Rice, you know, we all know that we have kids in our parishes that don't come to schools, and we also know that we have various demographics within our regions that are very underrepresented in our Catholic schools. Catholic population, Catholic kids that never think Catholic education is a possibility. It's not even on their radar, and we've seen an increase in the number of Hispanic kids in our parishes, the number of Hispanic kids in our region. They don't think Catholic education is a possibility because of finances. This allows families that are Catholic and love their faith to potentially go to a Catholic high school, and they would have never thought it possible. Now, is that gonna increase our responsibility for communicating with these families and making sure that they feel accepted in our communities? Absolutely, but I don't think that's a bad thing. People that love their faith, I'm all for more people who love the Catholic faith that want a Catholic education. So it allows that. It also, like Bishop mentioned, those families that never thought that they could come into your school. The thing about MOScholars, if you're going into kindergarten or first grade, you automatically qualify in terms of if your finances are there, you're in. Okay? So if I have a kindergartner and my family qualifies, economically, my kid qualifies for this scholarship in kindergarten. And as long as I don't make too much money that I max out, that kid can keep that scholarship through 12th grade. So they're getting a K through 12 education with MOScholars, okay? So that's a huge deal. Entering kindergarten or entering first grade, they can automatically qualify. Otherwise, they have to have an IEP, or they have to be coming from a public school into a private school and have had a semester in the last 12 months. So kids that want to transfer in. Yeah, that's how this all originated. When everything shut down during COVID, people got frustrated. Catholic schools stayed open, private schools stayed open, public schools shut down, and the legislator said, people have to have an option. They got to be able to send their kids to schools that want to stay open and want to educate. So that's how this originated. But it's going to continue to benefit us if we do things properly when we're going through this. I get excited about Catholic education, but when we partnered with Kansas City, St. Joe, and when they expanded the geographical region, I got really excited because I see this as a game changer for Catholic education in our area. I mean, it absolutely can be. And I would love to see full classes like they were 20, 30 years ago, or in a lot of our communities. But the other part of that is so crucial, at Notre Dame High School and every Catholic school in our diocese, your tuition may be $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, but the cost to educate those students are a lot greater. It may be twice as much. You may be charging a family $3,000, but it costs $6,000 to educate that kid. Who's picking up the rest? The parish and donations. The parish and then having to do fundraisers. Okay? I know here at Notre Dame High School it's almost $11,000 to educate. Okay? But we're charging our Catholic families just over $7,000. So every year we know we've got to raise over $3,000 a student for everyone in our building, okay? To know that you've got money coming in, and with the new legislation, $6,700 per kid into the schools, parishes aren't going to have to subsidize for all the kids in their building anymore, okay? That frees up money in the parishes to do whatever they need to do, to give more financial aid to other students, or to all these underfunded programs that are in their parishes. It allows them now to use those funds to benefit the entire parish, okay? And that's the important part that people need to realize and understand. It's not, I'm not doing this for Notre Dame High School. I am in the long game, but I don't expect Notre Dame High School to gain maybe more than 3, 4, 5 kids this year, next year. But in the long game, 8 years from now, I could have over half of my school get MOScholars because they were kindergartners coming through. So that's where we're going to benefit, but it's also going to benefit each and every one of our parishes if we do this right. So that kind of brings us to the next, why are you here? Okay? It's a tax credit program. It only works if the bucket's full. Okay? We can have thousands of kids that qualify, but if the tax credits aren't sitting there to fund it, it doesn't work. And we're in the same position we are with the Herzog Foundation. We've got 1,000 kids trying to get in through this system, and we're only funding 250 or whatever it may be. And when this new legislation came out, I met with Steve Schmitzy, I met with some other accountants, and I just wanted to understand, does this make sense from a business standpoint? Does this make sense because I don't know. Like Bishop, but that's not my education. And I don't want to pretend like I know what I'm doing here when it comes to how this benefits businesses. People that know what they're doing, if this is beneficial. So, and the question was, well, if I give money, is that going to, let me rephrase, because this is something that I really need everybody to understand too. It's a tax credit. You guys in businesses understand tax credits. Accountants understand tax credits. It's not a donation. It's a tax credit. You give it, and it'll come back to you eventually. There's a wait time, by and large. Again, maybe over my skis here, but in talking about this doesn't work in our parishes, in our schools, if people say, well, I'm going to do the tax credit and I'm going to stop giving a donation. Okay? It's a yes and. It's not a yes or, because our donations are so vital to what we're doing. So tax credits, it's taxes you're going to have to pay anyways, most likely. I know there's other tax credits out there, but we need people to take advantage and fill the bucket on the Mo-Scholars tax credit side of things, so that kids that want to receive this education, the money's there. And it may not go specifically to Notre Dame or to St. Mary, but if the bucket's full, everybody that's eligible, they all get to benefit from it. If the bucket's not full, then it becomes limited to who applied first and what is the financial level and everything else. So that's why thank you for coming tonight. Thank you for coming to listen to this. On the tax credit side of things, for the Mo-Scholars K-12 scholarship program, if you go to the state treasurer's page, the link is down there at the bottom. It takes you through the process of applying for this tax credit. Okay, so that particular page then has a drop down for you to select whether you are whatever type of corporation you are, whether you're an individual, whatever it may be. The minimum contribution for the tax credit is $500. And the way this tax credit works, it's a dollar for dollar. So up to 50%, up to half of your tax liability. So $1,000 tax liability for the state, 500 of it is tax credit worthy. Okay, and then this is where it gets more other people's ballpark in terms of just, because I know there's a lot of tax credit programs out there, and I know each one's a little bit different and how it works. I know when we give to pregnancy resource centers, when we give they're all different in terms of how much of your dollar is actually going into the tax credit. Well, this one's dollar for dollar, up to half of your liability. The other component of that, the tax credit with the new legislation, currently it's capped at $25 million for the state, and I think Bright Futures has $7 million allocated specifically to them of that $25 million. The state hasn't maxed out its $25 million yet. I think it got about 17, 18 million this past year. The new legislation takes that from 25 million to 75 million, okay? It takes it up to that tax credit limit up to $75 million when they open it up to the entire state. So a lot more opportunity. The way it has been explained to me by the Bright Futures folks is that let's say like right now, 7 million is what Bright Futures has available to them, but if they max that out, they can petition for more, and the state's not, it's not all taken. So the state's going to say, yep, absolutely, you can have more if you think you can get more tax credits. So that's the way it's currently working, and I know the bishop's office, diocesan office, has worked with the Diocese of Kansas City, St. Joe on like what our responsibilities are and everything else.
I will say this, Bishop Johnston, I didn't think I said this at the Springfield Catholic meeting. He asked me to raise $2 million in tax credits. And I said, I think that's doable. I didn't think that was too bad. Hello? I didn't think I don't know. Am I being naive? I don't know. But he asked me to raise $2 million in tax credits. I'm just telling you right now.
So that's where you come in. That's where you come in to get the word out about the program. Because ideally, they closed the window yesterday for those students that wanted to apply for this academic school year for those municipalities with 30,000 plus. The legislators passed the law, but they haven't written the rules for the law yet. So we don't know what the rest of the guidelines are. That's supposed to be released at the end of August. But as people start thinking about next school year and start applying and enrolling come, second semester, so January of this upcoming year, we need to know where we are bucket-wise in tax credits so that we know how much money we're going to be able to dole out to people for scholarships for the upcoming year. I say we, I have no part in that, but I hope the number's big so that people that apply, to all of our schools can go. So that's the information for the Missouri State Treasurer's Office. That's a chart that's on your handout too. That's just a kind of a breakdown. For those of you who understand this a lot more than I do, and I don't want to speak like I'm an expert. I'm an expert on the education side. On the tax credit side, I am not. That's where you guys come in, and that's where you come in to get the word out, to ask the right questions, and to help this program along. So that's the end of my component of it, to explain the program to you. I know Steve, when we get to the question and answer portion, he's looked into this in a little more detail and be willing to answer more specific business side questions if people have those. At this point, Deacon Huff, if there's anything else that you would like to come up and say. So thank you very much.
I do want to start off with reiterating something that Tim said, because it's something that is very important to our school endowment people and to our pastors that don't go, oh, I'm going to drop 500 here, that's 500 I don't have to give for something else. It's not a donation, it's a tax credit. So please, we don't want to take away from anything else that you're doing, please. This could be a huge boon for the parishes. And I've seen that in parishes in our diocese where students that they have to do local scholarships, they're able to tap into this MOScholars money. It's a game changer for Catholic education in southern Missouri. And again, same thing, as Tim mentioned, there's other tax credits. My wife and I, we've taken advantage of tax credits for food shelter, or food banks and women's shelters, and we're going to continue to do that. But we're also going to do MOScholars this year. But we can't do this without you. And not just for you taking advantage of it, but we need you to spread the word about this program. I would like to see us make sure that we can fund every eligible family. I don't want anybody turned away in our diocese from Catholic education because of finances. And our principals and priests will tell you how expensive, and we're cheaper. I'm a retired public school superintendent also. I've done the budgets. I actually did the budget for Cape Public Schools as their CFO for a while. So I know how much education costs. We are efficient. We do a great job with not enough resources. This is a game changer. But what I really want to talk about is why that's important, and why what you do here is so valuable. And to do that, I'd like to share 3 quotes. The first is a fairly recent quote. It's from Bishop Robert Barron in his reflection about the recent Olympic Games opening ceremony. Bishop Barron said, "This deeply secularist postmodern society knows who its enemy is. They're naming it, and we should believe them." My second quote is from Malcolm X, who I don't think was a bishop. Unless there was, I told Bishop, unless there was a Malcolm the 10th or something who was a pope that I don't know about. But I don't think that was him. But Malcolm X said, and remember what Bishop Barron said, our postmodern society knows who its enemy is, and they're naming it. Malcolm X said, only a fool would let his enemy teach his children. He put those 2 bits of wisdom together. This deeply secularist postmodern society knows who its enemy is. Only a fool would let his enemy teach his children. And it is important, and I really want to underline what Bishop said, that in our need to fill classroom seats, we do not lose sight of the very purpose for having those seats. Pastors, principals, we don't want to add, and this is a problem they ran into Kansas City, is they were doing so many, they were losing track of who they were a little bit. So we want families that whether they're Catholic or not, that buy into our mission. They want to be partners with us. So the support of our MOScholars tax credit partners, you and I hope your friends, will allow more families, both Catholic and not Catholic, to access quality Catholic education. And it's critical that in doing that, though, we do not in the process leave behind the very reason that they want to be here. And that brings us to our third quote from St. Paul. And I think this was in the office, no, in morning prayer this morning. It was one of the options for the reading part of this, from Romans chapter 13, I think. Do not conform yourselves to this age, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may discern the will of God, what is good and pleasing and perfect. And I just don't know of a better mission statement for Catholic schools. Be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may discern the will of God, what is good and pleasing and perfect. Remember, our goal is not, as Bishop said, not to fill seats, but to fill heaven. And I'd like to thank all of our MOScholars partners here tonight for their help in accomplishing that goal. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Deacon Huff, as well. At this point, we've talked about it. Hopefully you know what MOScholars is. You know about the tax credits, how the tax credits are set up, but wanted an opportunity, if you have specific questions, to be able to ask those questions, and hopefully we can answer them. Or if we can't answer them, that we can find out the answers so we can get back to you. So does anyone have specific questions at this point? Yeah, Deacon.
Will the money from Southern Missouri contributed to this fund in the Bright Futures Fund be somehow earmarked for Southern Missouri, or will it be commingled with the Kansas City funds?
Yes. And again, it's a tricky thing because tax credit data is very, very private and protected. But we are looking at, with MOScholars, they're initially looking at zip codes and area codes and stuff to make sure. And then I am going back in and looking at those also to try to make sure. It's important, though, if you do a contribution, I mean, you don't have to, but if you send me an email and say, hey, we did this, so I can make sure it gets in the coffers. Because there are very strict rules and laws about that information not being public. But actually, they're committed, that we won't do that this many this year, we won't have that many applications, to funding 150. So if anything, I think we will get more than we're putting in. But as Tim said, if there's not money in that bucket, we can't give the scholarships. So yeah, we're looking at that. And again, it will be a lot simpler at some point. I say, you know, they have bright futures, that we'd like to have our own brighter futures. I don't think they know I want to call it that, but that's what I want to call it. And either as a subsidiary and someone who understands 501c3s better than me, where it will be easier to manage that data, or as our own separate nonprofit. But without their help, we wouldn't be here. Because as we try to work with Herzog, I'm not knocking, they did Christian schools. It took me a while to convince them that Catholic schools were Christian schools. But we did, but they just didn't have the funds. And I don't want to repeat that process. So we need your help to make sure those funds are there.
So just to reiterate that Bright Futures is that they are dedicated to in as not specific way as possible, identifying stuff coming from our diocese to go back to our diocese. And that's, Bishop Rice, you're saying the same thing. Okay, thank you.
Two questions. So the money that goes into this fill the pot, does that only go for tuition, or will it buy basketballs for the sports and cheesecake for the cafeteria, or teacher salaries? Then I got a follow-up.
So to answer that, the MOScholars program is a scholarship program that goes, the way it actually is set up, the money doesn't go directly to the schools. The state, I think the state, this is the way for them to not do a voucher program. So it goes through the family to the school. So directly for that student's tuition to the school. So there's software out there called Class Wallet. We have to use it for DESE for all of our title stuff and whatever, but that money then goes for that particular student into a school for that scholarship amount. So it's tuition only, yes.
If you add a new student to a school, and if that cost per student, your average cost per student is $9,000, it's not going to cost you $9,000 more. Because you're not going to necessarily hire a new teacher or build a new classroom or anything like that. You're going to be out the toilet paper. Okay? So that will allow funds to be there for all those other things also. There's an economy of scale in everything, and that's true for schools.
And I just want to add, I know from my own experience, and I don't know how it works. I can't speak for the grade schools or the other high schools, but a huge part of the time and effort that is spent on the part of this high school is actually collecting tuition. I mean, because we budget for the tuition, but then when the tuition doesn't come in, when people don't pay it, and trying to then the efforts to collect tuition, and this is on top of financial aid and everything else, and that number can get quite large. If as a school, I know that I'm getting that I'm getting a check through MOScholars coming in for at least $6,700 of that, I mean, I'm a happy camper, because I know that I've already accounted for that, and I don't have to, fundraise for more of that or ask, for whatever to cover that. So that's the other component of that. Families that if we know, okay, if we've got 6,700 coming in and it's 75 to go to school here, well, I've got most of it covered already, and I don't have to worry about trying to track that down.
I would ask, and this may be to you, Steve, could you just walk through one of those columns? I'm interested in the individual, and maybe some here are interested in the corporate tax, So is that adjusted income, gross income, taxable income? Could you walk through?
So basically, so basically it'd be the same as, your personal income. The corporate works basically the same way, where you have your expenses, and so you'd have corporate, well, you've got the corporate income there. They go down of $75,000. They go down to the tax obligation. That seems like a low rate. I didn't recalculate it, but so then you go down to, so you owe the state $2,250 in that first column. And so this credit allows you to, instead of writing the state a check for $2,250, basically, you're going to write the check check to the state for $1,125. That goes into their general revenue fund. And in this case, you're writing another check to education of Catholic students for $1,125. So your tax liability is the same. That doesn't change. But it's really important to note that you're directing half of your state tax liability to Catholic education specifically, and so basically you're, instead of going into general revenue and the state using it for whatever they want, you're actually directing half of the taxes you're going to pay anyhow to Catholic education. So it's done, you apply you apply the credit on the, so, yeah, so we, I work for Drury Southwest, and back in, I forget, it's been a couple years ago, we didn't have the program down here. Bishop Johnston called Dennis Volink, and he said, hey, I've got exactly what's been described here. He said, I've got a waiting list of kids that are not funded. Drury Southwest, can you help us out and, estimate half of your tax liability? And so actually the first time we participated in this, we participated with Bishop Johnston in the Kansas City Diocese because we didn't have it here. Now we'll donate Springfield, Cape Girardeau now, but oh, he knows that. I've talked to him twice, so. But yeah, it's one of the neat things about this is you're going to pay the tax liability anyhow. So why not steer half of it to Catholic education? The important point there is, if all the accountants in the room know this, but anybody else, if you're telling, it's really, really important. It's been mentioned twice, but it's really, really important to make sure that people know the difference between a tax credit and a tax donation. The tax credit, all you're doing is redirecting what you're already going to pay anyhow. So, but one of the things I participated in the strategic planning as the chairman of the finance committee. I can tell you that Notre Dame's budget has no excess at the end of the day. So we can't lose donations of whatever. If you're writing a donation check to Notre Dame or whoever's writing a donation, we can't lose those donation dollars. So I know it's been mentioned twice, but I really wanted to kind of hammer that one again to make sure people understand that credits, all you're doing is steering your tax liability anyhow. Donations, we still have to have the donations. So, and hopefully I answered your question, Mark. Okay. Yeah. So. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure of the specific cutoff dates. I haven't looked at it to that detail, but I did look at the website before it came out. And so you fill out your personal information, you estimate your liability, and then what Deacon Huff had just mentioned, there's a pull-down menu, and you actually make sure that you check off that in Bright Futures. And they actually, on the website, right next to the Bright Futures thing, it'll tell you how many credits are still available under Bright Futures. So. Right. Mm-hmm. Yep. Right. Yep.
The thing, it is done annually, but the carryover is 4 years. If you don't use all of your liability, it's my understanding, you don't use all of your liability, or the tax credits in that first year, it carries over. Yeah, Brian.
So kindergartners and first graders and public school students qualify. What about homeschool students?
Homeschool students do not qualify because they have to have been in a public school, per the state legislation. They have to have been in a public school for a semester in the past 12 months or be entering kindergarten or first grade. That's the state guidelines for that, yeah. Now, there are some homeschoolers that are doing online school through the public school. They would potentially qualify that way if they're doing online. But, that would be looking at specific situations, okay? Other questions?
So you've mentioned the 6,700 a few times. Is that a cap for tuition coming out of this Bright Futures Fund to individual students?
So the number actually changes. It shifts, and that's what's being written into the legislation right now as far as the rules. Currently, like for students that are qualifying now, it started out at $6,375, and I think it's just over $6,400 now, but the new legislation bumps it up to $67. And it's not like you qualify for a partial scholarship. It's all or nothing. You get the whole amount if you qualify. That's why that's the important part for the schools and the parishes to understand too, is that your tuition models need to reflect that the cost of education is whatever it actually is, and then this MOScholars then goes against that $6,700 then is deducted off of the full cost to educate the students, so that and Notre Dame High School did this 2 years ago. St. Vincent's Grade School did this 2 years ago, just kind of flipped it so that here's the total cost, and here are the deductions that you're getting, which leaves the remaining tuition that's left to pay, okay? Just so we're being more transparent that way, because a lot of families are like, well, our tuition's only $3,000. That's all they're charging you, but that's not how much it costs to educate, okay? Yes, Caroline.
When you make a donation to the Bright Futures Fund, you cannot designate it that it'll come to Notre Dame or to St. Vincent's or St. Mary's. Can't do that, can you?
Correct, yes. When you are giving to Bright Futures, and then our diocese has potentially a full pot that anybody that wants to go to Notre Dame or St. Vincent's or St. Augustine or St. Joe, that money's there for them to get a scholarship. Yes, yeah, they have to apply and qualify, and if the money is there, they get the funds. So, no, they won't. It's not set up so you can designate, I want my money to go to this school or that school. Yeah, but the important thing is, like community. That's why we're having this meeting that's community wide, and it's not necessarily just Cape Girardeau, because as soon as this opens up to the entire state, we've got Sacred Heart, Poplar Bluff. We've got Mark here tonight with us. Mark's going to be able to benefit from this, and if the pot's full, he's going to be able to offer this right away. But if the pot's not full, it's going to be more of a problem of, okay, if the funds are there, you might be able to get MOScholars.
So it's really important that applications are made. So when they go up to the diocese, they can be approved.
Yeah, the hard part is right now, if the tax credits are there first, the tax credits have to be there first because they can't start applying. So it's a twofold process and twofold responsibility that we have and that the diocese has right now is we've got to get the word out on both fronts. We need the money sitting there, and then we need to get the word out to all the families to apply for it. Yeah. So this is step one to get the word out on, because right now, if we were to say, hey, go get a MOScholars scholarship, they can't, because the deadline's passed for this year because of they have to close it to disperse this year's funds. Right. Okay. Right. By the end of the year. Yeah.
So the $6,700, okay, like I know at Notre Dame it's a different situation, but the little schools, they'll get all 67, right? The parent doesn't get to keep the extra.
Yeah, that's correct. If it's written into your tuition that's how much it costs to educate that kid. Otherwise, if your number is lower than that, then the family keeps, for educational purposes, the remainder of those funds. So it's a benefit. Yep.
So how do we make sure that our parish school has all the Ts crossed and the, and the Is dotted, that the cost of the education is showing up appropriately, that we can maximize the amount? Okay, okay.
I was just going to say that when you started asking that question, this is our first dog and pony show. We need to get our priests on board. We need to get the principals on board so that they know how this works, because this is the initial group over here. I'm hoping that you will go and talk to the people that you work with, other people in the business sector, and to get them on board to start talking about this. But I need my pastors to know exactly what this is about so that they can go after students. I need the principals to know what it's about. And that very question about how much and everything, that needs how much the actual cost of education is for each student. We need to know all those things and have all of our ducks in a row. So for Deacon and I, our responsibility isn't finished after next Tuesday when we're in Joplin. We still have to go over after these priests who are like me. They're in a fog when you start talking about tax. I don't know what you're talking about. Well, we need to be educated. So that's our responsibility to do that.
As we switched to Bright Futures, and I said, hey, can I have some copies of the invoices you guys are using, and for the schools in Cape and Joplin and Springfield. I talked to the business people, and I sent them copies of those invoices so they could see how to kind of model those. Notre Dame was ahead of the game on that here. But I think that's a good thing anyway. It's just more clarity to show what that cost of education is. Because sometimes people will go, oh, it cost $4,000. No, it didn't. It cost $8,000. And somebody in that parish is paying that difference. So I think that's good for people to understand that what it really costs. And I can assure you, the people aren't wasting money. We are very efficient. Our schools are, every single one of them. Yeah, and we'll have to coordinate with the business offices and all that.
Other questions? So the question is, how are we getting this information out? Well, I'd like to see it in every parish, like them handing them out and people talking about it from the after Mass. But that's what I would like to see. I don't know if the bishop and Deacon Huff are behind that as well. But I mean, I think that's kind of the process, getting it out to business leaders, getting it out to families, but then getting it out to parishioners too, and see. Yeah, I mean, at this point, Notre Dame is printing all these copies, but we're more than happy to, because it's going to benefit everybody. Yes, absolutely. We have another printout, and I can give you one before you go that's on the scholarship side too, that explains the scholarships in more detail. Okay, but getting the word out, I do have a PDF file of that. Yes, yeah. Thank you, Jordan. Okay, so sure, yep, absolutely. Okay, so there are essentially kind of three ways that you can qualify. Okay, two of them are dependent upon finances. Okay, the one that's not dependent upon finances is if you have an IEP, an individual educational plan that the public school has to do for you, but we have plenty of students in our schools that get those IEPs from the public schools, and then our schools, either our schools, do what that IEP is talking about, that plan for that student, or that student receives services at the public school for that, if it's reading or if it's, whatever it may be. So that they're automatically qualified. You can make $1 million a year, and if your child has an IEP, you get $MOScholars. That's one way. The other way is if I'm a kindergartner, if I have a family, if I have children that are going into kindergarten or first grade, either one, entry level into our Catholic grade schools, and I meet the financial requirements, I'm qualified. Okay, so that's two, and then that follows them. And then step three is if I have attended a public school for a semester in the past 12 months, and I am trying to enroll into a private school, and I meet the financial requirements, I qualify. Okay, thank you for asking that question.
I'm gonna lay
And what Mike just mentioned is part of the new legislation. They're adding some other things to what we just talked about, and they haven't specifically written all of the rules yet. But Mike had read that dyslexia is another thing that qualifies you like an IEP would. If you're dyslexic, autism. Okay. So they are expanding that again. I'm anticipating all those rules so that we know a little more what those are going to be. Yes. So again, now we're getting into the nuances of the laws and the rules. So part of the legislation, and Deacon, you may be able to talk about this a little bit more, but my understanding is if you have a sibling that qualifies, you're a higher priority than someone that is not in the program at all. That doesn't put you at the top of the list, is my understanding, but it bumps you up that if the funds are there and you're living in the same household with the same economic level, that you would be one of the higher priorities for getting that scholarship. That's the part I don't think is the case. If both students have IEPs, yes. If one student has an IEP and the family qualifies financially, I think. Yeah. And let me add, it's an IEP or an ISP, right? Yeah. Service plan or educational plan, yeah. So it's both, IEP and ISP. Now, another question that comes up, and this, for most of you may be a foreign language, but for those of you that know education, a 504 plan does not count. Okay, if a child has a 504 plan, that's not a specific plan that the public school put in place. It has to be an IEP or an ISP, okay? If that didn't mean anything to you, that's okay. Other questions?
On that, I will comment that the new director of MOScholars, not of MOScholars, but of Bright Future, Nicolette Gibson, I know her well. She is probably, in my opinion, of all the educators I know, she knows more about government funding and Catholic education and special ed and Catholic education. And that's a real priority for her to make sure that we get the funding into those areas. She's pretty sharp in those areas. So she's been very visible in Jeff City fighting for us.
And also, our state treasurer, it was earlier in the year at the Cape Chamber event, he came and talked specifically about these MOScholars tax credits and these MOScholars tax, this opportunity, which I was surprised, but he did. So the state is pushing this quite a bit too. Yes. So that would be a Steve question. So you're talking about taking the credit on your actual taxes. Is that what you're talking? That's what you're asking.
What was the question? Yeah, it's just if you have the credits, it's just on the. Now, I have a tax director that works for me, so the actual mechanics of it, I asked her about it the other day, and she was applying it to our liability for this 2023 year. And it's it's actually on the form itself where you have identified the credits. So. It's yeah, it's the same. Yeah.
I have a technical question here on the tax return component. So I have plenty of people I know that also do pregnancy resource credits, and food bank and small business owners that have passed through. So this allows 50%. Has anybody asked the question of Missouri of what the ordering of rules would be to know, okay, if we get 50% through this, then will those other donations still be there? Can they essentially offset all of their taxes through different types of credits?
And I could be wrong on this. I think my assumption has been that tax credits as a whole, that there's a limit to 50% taxable, but I'm not 100%. Yeah. Okay. I think that's it. So, and honestly, you decide how you want to divvy that up. Rose and I, unfortunately, never did max out, though we have donated to both of those things. We're going to max out this year. But, they're all good causes. So I'm not against that. This is a dollar for dollar, not 75%, just say it. So, but yeah, they're all, and I don't want to take away from those.
So I'm on the website, and it says donations to the selected MOScholars EAO must be made within 30 days of the date this tax credit reservation request. So I just want to understand, so are you writing, because on the back of this, are you writing your check to MOScholars? Or to Bright Futures, excuse me. So if you're taking your tax credit, then you're writing your check to Bright Futures. So how do I make a donation to, so the money, okay, I got you. And then the Bright Futures gives the scholarship. Okay.
It's kind of a smoke and mirrors, because that way they can say it's not
Going to the, and it's not going directly to a parochial school. Yeah.
And as I try to comprehend this with my small mind, I think about it in the terms of, okay, this is the way I conceptualize it. So I write a check to Bright Futures Fund. It's out of my account, and let's say it's the $500 because I had a $1,000 tax liability. I'm out that money until I've done my taxes, and then I get the credit back in that regards. Absolutely, yeah. And so they want you to estimate what your tax liability, and if you miscalculate, you get to carry over whatever's left. Okay. Yes. It's not a charitable contribution, right? Norman's asking if well, I'll let you ask.
The amount that's directed toward the Bright Futures funds, that's not considered a charitable contribution, is it? No.
Okay. That clarifies. It's not a charitable contribution. It's a tax credit. Right. Yeah. Credits are better, says it says Steve, in the long run. Others? I know I want to thank you for coming and listening, and I know I'm going to turn this over to Bishop Rice to close us out this evening.
Well, I'm going to close with a story that just happened yesterday. Yesterday, I had lunch at
Dexter Barbecue.
And who was there with me?
I can't remember his first.
So I had lunch yesterday. I met this kid named Cade. Does anybody know Cade? Cade is a graduate of Sacred Heart Grade School, and he's also a graduate of Notre Dame High School, who just got back from a 6-week program working with Mother Teresa's nuns in Calcutta. Okay? And I know him because there's a little, what do they call it, face group of Notre Dame graduates that go to Missouri S&T, or yeah. So I got to know him through some other people, and so we're having lunch yesterday to catch up on how his experience was going to Mother Teresa's, working there for 6 weeks, and we're getting done. Then we run into the principal of Sacred Heart. I introduced them, and I think in a beautiful way, that's what we're all about. A kid who's a graduate of Sacred Heart, and then who goes to Notre Dame, who's going to Columbia, and he went to India for 6 weeks to work with Mother Teresa's nuns. And he is just, the only word I can think is gush. He's just gushing out all of this faith and his experiences of prayer. And now he's talking about, silence is so beautiful. Just to go in front of the Blessed Sacrament, it's just lovely. I thought, yeah, I know that. I know, Cade, and I'm glad you discovered that, because they do a holy hour every morning with the nuns when they're working up over there. And it was just just to see the connection between, Sacred Heart and Notre Dame and going to Missouri S&T, is that S&T? Whatever that is, yeah, in Columbia. And then he starts talking about he came to Mass at the Newman Center here last week for some reason. It was a weekday, and he ran into some of his classmates who were at the Mass, and he didn't even know they were still even going to Mass, and it was just like this, there's this whole revival, and I just think there are some beautiful things that are going on in southern Missouri. There really are. And I have to remember that. I texted Cade yesterday as I was driving back to Springfield, and I said, I can't tell you how edifying our lunch was. It just really built me up. I needed to be built up, and this college kid did that for me. And I think relating that to what we've been talking about tax credits and all this kind of stuff, that's all part of it. Sometimes they say that the devil is in the details and you're asking these specific questions. We don't believe that. We believe God is in the details, huh? God is in the details. And the state has given this opportunity to us. And I say, let's take it for as far as we can take it. And to that end, I want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank Notre Dame and Tim and the staff for hosting this. I need you to go to the people that you know and start talking this up, okay? Don't leave empty-handed. Take some of these brochures and start talking this up, because our job is not done. We have another meeting in Joplin, but then we also have to start telling our priests so that they know what this is about. Our principals need to know what this is about, and even talking at the parishes and really get this going, because this can be a real game changer for southern Missouri. So let's end with a glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen. Praise be Jesus Christ. Thanks, everybody, for coming.
I want to, one last thing, if Bishop Rice is in it for the long game too, because the more kids we have in Catholic schools, the more opportunities they have to be religious. And we definitely need more religious in our life.
Speaking of religious, Deacon Rob is taking his daughter down to the convent on the 14th. He's dropping her off. Is she going to be a nun, or at least she's going to give it her go? So that's a beautiful thing. Yeah, from your mouth to God's ear on that one. Thank you.
And if you end up having questions, if you wanted to reach out to me at the school, or if you have Bishop Rice or Deacon Huff or anyone else, we want to answer questions because we want to get the word out and we want people to feel comfortable with what they're doing with this. But thank you for coming tonight. Continue to spread the word and help us in Catholic education. So thank you.